Hello everybody, welcome back to Book of Kings, where we discuss topics such as history, religion, philosophy, psychology, culture, and more, and the way that they all interact with one another. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video. Hope you enjoy. Hello everybody, we are back for another video. So, the topic of today's video is a topic that has a little bit of notoriety surrounding it, to say the least. It's a topic about a particular profession of people, I guess you could say, which conjure up a lot of not so positive images. And that is the topic of assassins. So, when people hear the term assassin, usually in their mind, they conjure up the image of some masked individual lurking in the shadows, holding a dagger, ready to take out their next victim. But today, we're going to discuss the true story of the original assassins. Now, the original assassins were members of a particular state within the medieval Muslim world, based around modern-day Iran and Syria. And that was the Nizari Ismaili State. So, in discussing this Nizari Ismaili State, we need to first discuss what are Nizari Ismailis. So let's first start with Ismailis. Ismailis are a branch of Shia Islam, which of course is the second largest branch of the religion of Islam. And being that Shi'ism is a branch of Islam, there are various branches within that Shia branch of Islam. And one of those branches is Ismaili Islam. And within that Ismaili branch of the Shia branch of the religion of Islam, there is another branch, and that is the branch of Nizari Ismaili Islam. So, in essence, what the Nizari Ismaili State was a state of Nizari Ismaili Muslims. And this Nizari Ismaili State was unique in the fact that it was not one landlocked, connected piece of land, but rather a collection of various physically separated fortresses and castles located in modern-day Iran and Syria. And this Nizari Ismaili State would be founded in one particular castle, the castle Alamut, by an individual named Hasan-i-Sabah. So, Hasan-i-Sabah was a member of the Nizari Ismaili community who was currently resisting the Seljuk dynasty, who was the major Sunni power within the region at the time and was oftentimes very hostile to the Nizari Ismaili community and the larger Shia Muslim community as a whole. So, Hasan-i-Sabah made it his objective and his prerogative to resist the Seljuk dynasty. So where our story begins, Hasan-i-Sabah was currently in hiding from the Seljuk Turks in the city of Gazvin in modern-day northern Iran. Now in this city of Gazvin, there rested a particular castle, and that is the castle of Alamut. So Hasan-i-Sabah, in his objective to resist the Seljuk Turks, made it his plan to form a Nizari Ismaili state, and he made it his objective to begin this state by gaining control of the castle Alamut. However, there was one caveat. This castle Alamut had never been conquered by military force ever. And on top of that, being that he was an individual on the run and a member of a small persecuted religious minority, taking this castle by force was not an option. So he had to improvise. He began his plan to take over this castle Alamut by infiltrating it from the inside. So the castle of Alamut was surrounded by a valley. And this valley surrounding the castle of Alamut was primarily populated by Shia Muslims who he sought to gain the support of in resistance to the Seljuks. So Hasan-i-Sabah began his plan to gain control of this castle from the inside by having his supporters, other members of the Nizari Ismaili network, settle around this castle. And then following this, he would proceed to settle within the village next to this castle, disguising himself as a school teacher. And he would then from this point play the waiting game and wait for his supporters to settle directly below the castle and begin to work there. So then from this point, once many of his supporters began to work within this castle, he then entered the castle, still maintaining his persona of a school teacher. And then once within this castle, he proceeded to make friends with the soldiers of the castle and earn their trust. And then from there, he would begin to convert many prominent figures within the castle of Alamut to his cause. And then finally, through this process of having his supporters work within that castle and infiltrating himself, winning over the soldiers, converting prominent figures to his cause, he was inevitably successful and gained control of this castle. And it should be noted, he did so without shedding a single drop of blood. And in fact, Hasan-i-Sabah was so soft-handed in gaining control of this castle that not only did he not execute the former lord of the castle, he in fact paid him monetary compensation for taking his castle from him. So this was of course the beginning of the Nizari Ismaili State. And then from this point, Hasan-i-Sabah would export this same strategy to various other castles throughout modern-day Iran and Syria, and his supporters would gain control of various other castles through this same method. And that, as I've mentioned, would form the Nizari Ismaili State, this network of physically disconnected castles which together formed one unified state. And this patchwork of physically separate castles were surprisingly cohesive, especially in comparison to the various other powers of that time in the medieval Middle East, namely the Seljuk dynasty and the Fatimid Caliphate. And this Nizari Ismaili state was renowned for being a beacon of free thought. So within this Nizari Ismaili state, various types of intellectuals, philosophers, scientists, theologians could discuss various topics such as religion and philosophy freely, and they could debate and share these ideas. But of course, being a small patchwork of various different castles and fortresses, the Nizari Ismaili state was faced with the challenge of these castles being surrounded on all sides by hostile enemies, the various Seljuk states. So, being a small state, being surrounded on all sides by hostile enemies, the option of defending themselves through direct military conflict against, of course, the more powerful Seljuk dynasty was by no means a viable option. So again, the Nizari Ismaili state had to improvise. And they did this by using a different strategy of self-defense in opposition to direct military conflict. And that was the use of assassinations. So the Nizari Ismaili state would carry out assassinations against powerful political figures who were generally hostile to the Nizari Ismailis, and often were figures who had committed massacres against the Nizari Ismailis. And they would generally carry out these assassinations in public places for the purpose of striking fear into the hearts of potential enemies. And it should be noted that the first assassination carried out by the Nizari Ismaili Muslims was against the famous vizier of the Seljuk Sultanate, Nizam al-Mulk. So through this practice of assassinations, the Nizari Ismaili Muslims developed a reputation that would cast fear into the hearts of their enemies. So in essence, through this fear of political assassination that they would strike into the hearts of their enemies, they were able to defend their state while minimizing having to resort to direct military conflict. Now, the Nizari Ismaili state would last up until the time of the Mongol invasion, when what is today modern Iran was conquered by the Mongolians, and of course their state would be conquered, destroyed, and they would be the victims of massacre at the hands of the Mongols. And with regard to the castles and fortresses within modern-day Syria, those would come under the control of the Mamluk Sultanate. So in essence, despite this reputation that people generally have when they think of the word assassin, of cold-blooded, vicious murderers lurking in the shadows, the original assassins, the members of the Nizari Ismaili state, were a small ragtag group from a small persecuted religious minority who were a beacon for open dialogue and debate, and who, due to being outmanned by their more powerful enemies, avoided direct military conflict whenever possible in favor of using targeted assassinations against the powerful figures who had persecuted them. So there you have it. That is the true story of the original assassins. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you next time. Thank you for watching. This has been another Book of Kings video. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video.